Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to call the Rules and Appointment Committee to order at this time. Ms. Carrillo, if you'll call the roll.
Malinowski.
Here.
Barron.
Here.
Mackey.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Next order of business is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting, September the 20th. They can be found on pages 6 through 8. Corrections.
Motion to approve.
Hello.
Malinowski. Barron.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Our next order of business is the adoption of the agenda. Ms. Carrillo, do we have any changes to the agenda at this time?
No, ma'am.
I'll entertain a motion of the agenda.
Second.
Hello?
Malinowski. Barron.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next order of business we will take up will be the interviews. And at this time, we will take interviews for the Business Service Center, Board of Assessment and Appeals, and the Airport Commission. And we will need to go into executive session to take care of our interviews. I'll entertain a motion.
Go to executive.
Second.
Hello?
Malinowski.
Yeah.
Barron.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Have executive session.
Oh, a second,
Ms. Carrillo, if you call for the vote, please.
Malinowski,
yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. We are returning from executive session where we did not take any action. However, we did interview 3 individuals for the Business Service Center, the Board of Assessments and Appeals, and the Airport Commission. Now we will move on to our next order of business, which is the actual appointments for those items or those interviews that we just had. And I will entertain a motion for item 5A for the appointment of the Business Service Center.
I'm sorry. Can I ask a question? Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I guess I wanted a little bit of clarity. So, for the Business Service Center, you have the kind of designations, right? Business industry attorney. And so on the application, I don't see where they actually specify which one. So I assume that we are making the assumptions based off of their work history, and we are deciding which category that we're placing them in. And I just wanted to make sure that was the assumption for the rest of committee members before I made a motion.
That was my assumption. But that may be something that we need to take up for future on that application for certain ones.
Well, I didn't know
I
if
was
you had a
gonna make
question. You
motion,
just
but
had
if you want to do that, go ahead and. Want me to do it?
Yeah, you go ahead.
All right. I mean, I don't believe, I'm looking at page 4 of the agenda. I don't believe numbers 1 and 2 actually have the qualifications to be on this committee. So my motion was going to be the recommended appointment of Dr. Ruth Najee and re-advertise the other 2 positions.
Can I just make an amendment? So to appoint Ruth Najee for the vacancy for the
For the
attorney.
attorney position,
Okay, so they
correct.
should. All right. Second.
Any further discussion? If not, Ms. Carrillo?
Malinowski, Barron,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Our next item is for the appointment of 5B, which is the Board of Assessments and Appeals. There is 1 vacancy and 2 applicants. I'll entertain a motion. Have some discussion?
I'll make the motion. Tasha Thompson is the applicant for this. She had a lot of experience, including litigation, which was one of the qualifications required. So I'll make a motion that we appoint Tasha Thompson.
Second for discussion.
Discussion?
Yes. I will say this one was a very hard one. They were both very, very good candidates, and I think they equally would bring some needed skill sets to the board. So I'm saying that just because I do support Tasha Thompson, but think that the other candidate is just as qualified as well, and hope that we continue to keep him on the list for future vacancies.
I mean, the other candidate,
Both were, yes, they both were equally qualified.
Yeah, and I think that this is one of those that it's a win-win. But I just out of, I guess, a point of to clarify somewhat, and that is that Mr. Alderman's application will still stay on file. Is that correct? For 1 year. So if there is a vacancy that will come up, he'll still be in consideration for the next vacancy.
If he chooses to stay on, then he will. Yes.
Okay, very well, good.
I'm sorry, what do you mean if he chooses to stay on? His application should stay on file automatically, correct?
Well, we sent a letter notifying them that they were not chosen, and if they choose to stay on file, we keep them on. Then they respond, then we will keep them on for the next appointment. They have the option to decline.
But if you don't have a response, if you don't get a response from an applicant, I'm just thinking future now.
We just keep them.
Okay, Good. So the automatic is to keep them. And I would like to pause and recognize our colleagues who have joined us. Councilwoman Shakise Newton and Councilman Derek Pugh hiding in the low.
No, he's just part of the audience now. He's not a councilman.
So we have a motion on the floor, and if there isn't any further discussion, then we will move forward with the vote. Ms. Carrillo?
Malinowski.
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
Baki.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Our next, so that takes care of our appointments for today. These items will go to full council next week. Our next item is item for action, which is to review the comprehensive council rules, which are located in our agenda packet, pages 9 through 15. I've spoken to Attorney Wright and did ask if Attorney McLean could come and, just kind of walk us through her document that she sent to us. But before that, Attorney Wright.
Yes, Madam Chair, you did ask. I have reviewed the document, and Ms. McLean, my chief deputy, is here present to answer any questions or review the recommendations that she put in her memo to the council.
And so that's what I'd like, if you just review your recommendations for us. That way, as a committee, we feel confident about what's moving forward, moving back to full council.
I'm not used to being over here in the. Well, good afternoon. All right, so my comments were in general, anything that I thought had to be changed, I actually did that on the first little round, and it was only a couple of things. And I think I did those in a red line version, and Nets and I talked about it, and I think we changed those in the original. So I then was asked for a memo of other thoughts and changes. What I wanted y'all to keep in mind is that the rules are only useful if you can use them. And I just want to make sure that you know what they say. They're not overly detailed, overly confusing, that all 11 of you can actually just go in there and know what it means, and that it brings some value. The Roberts rules is out there for, in my opinion, for all your motions and things like that. And unless we're going to change those rules, I don't know that we need them in here. But mainly I thought a few things were a little confusing and wordy, and but that's completely up to y'all. If everybody thinks that they're usable, it's great. I just want y'all to have rules that mean something to you, that are usable. So
Could you provide us with some specific examples of those items that were wordy or unused, they weren't useful or not going to be useful to us?
sure. So I did some of that in the memo. I think for rule 1.1, I think the reason, so I actually added some language here, and I got this from the model rules, and I like the fact that it talks about, one, if we just say county council, that means every board and commission. So if we don't go to the trouble of pointing that out, then the board and commission uses these rules. Two, if we fail to abide by our own rules, that doesn't affect the action. It doesn't void anything. These are for our guidance. It doesn't mean you can sue us over it. These are just as a guide for us. I think giving yourselves a little leeway is always a good idea. Mr. Malinowski would probably disagree with that. He rule oriented. I got it. Yes, sir.
You went from you said you tried to abbreviate these in some instances, and this one obviously went from an abbreviated version to a rather lengthy version. And so my question on this one is, where it's added into all boards and commissions for which the county council appoints a majority of the members. But some of these, I thought, where we appoint a majority of the members, already have their own set of rules. like the planning commission. I believe they've got a set of rules that they must follow. So are we saying we're now superseding those rules and they come under this or what?
You know, the planning commission is a body you appoint, so you could tell them what rules they have. Or you can also make exclusions. I mean, but if you wanted to tell the planning commission what rules they have to follow, I'm assuming you could do it. They're your body. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. I just think that this was we can say for any, you know, board or commission that doesn't have their own rules, anything like that, these are the ones that apply. However you like to do that. It wasn't my goal in expanding this one, which is one of the only times I think I did it, was to actually add in some language just to help with the whole what these rules do and don't mean, that you can't use them against us. They're for us to use.
So we would need all that language following where it says these rules were adopted as guidelines to assist and through the end, right?
I like that. Yes, but again,
Thank you.
okay, I pared down 1.3 was just it's a lot of language. The open meeting language basically is just state law. There's nothing really that we're doing differently other than there was some language about recording. So I just pared that down to maybe a little more simple. We're going to record them all and we'll broadcast them live and record where practical. I just took out the whole, you know, I don't know, rigmarole about when something's practical. Well, we're going to have to use our common sense on that. And you can't argue with that. Is the, you know, if the chair thinks it's just not practical because, I don't know, something happened and we can't do it today. And, you know, we're having some issues with our technical, it isn't practical, and we'll do it the best we can. I also suggested a new rule, which is from the model rules, which I think is not necessarily required, but I like it a lot. Council's a policymaking legislative body, provides a vision for the county, provides guidelines to county administration regarding how the county is to be run. Council members have authority only when acting together, speaking with one voice, and have no individual authority over county operations. I like that. It's a pretty succinct way of putting a vision out there, what council does. The date and time part, the only thing I changed on that, and this was actually important, was at the in B under electronic participation, we need to make sure that you, if you call in on a special called meeting, you cannot participate in the executive session. I know we did that during COVID, but it was at extreme times.
Wait a minute, hold on, Madam Chair. I want some clarification on the last one because we're discussing rules 1.1, 1.3, 1.5, but the new rule says 3.1. So does it go at the space of 3.1 or does it come in here as a 1 point something? Because before 3.1 had to do with seating.
Have
So
1.5.
No, the number is,
sometimes.
the number was neither here nor there. It was actually model rule 3.1. It can go wherever we deem
Got it.
appropriate. Sorry if I made that confusing. Back to, okay, so the last one was, if you participate electronically, you may not participate in the executive session. Okay, I had a question. Let's see. Oh, I did add some language at the top of the following page, sample language. I thought it was simpler about calling special called meetings. Again, this is just an opinion. If you like the other language, there was really nothing wrong with it. It's just a little succinct, a little more succinct probably. 1.7, I'm not sure what your rules are intended to say about people putting a motion, council member putting a motion on the agenda. So your rules basically say you can do it 24 hours before the meeting, but then you have other rules that are very strict about when you add something to an agenda and when it has to be published and when it has to be turned in. So I'm not sure which one you want to follow for council motions. We just need to make sure they match.
1 second, Mr. Malnusky.
yes, Attorney McLean, I wanted to go back to your 1.5B under electronic participation.
Yes, sir.
You wrote Wait a minute, that's not your language, is it? Yours is the portion that says sample language simpler?
Correct. The only thing on 1.5 that I wrote in is, in my version, it's underlined under, double underlined under electronic participation. That's the only thing I added. And then that sample language simpler just was about, calling a special call meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Some decision about, how you want to handle council motions, and does 24-hour rule still apply for that, or is that going to fall under every other requirement to get agenda matters in a week early? I took out the censure rule. I know I was here when we talked about it. It can go back in. There is a censure rule in the model rules, but again, it's a tough call, guys. I mean, you can't do anything to them, right? Other than maybe publicly embarrass them, maybe. But there are other ways around. If someone's breaking the law, call law enforcement. That's what SLED's for. If they can't behave themselves in a meeting, that's what the chair is for. So it absolutely can go back in. No reason you can't have it. I'm not sure what you what's the end game? Why, what do you think you're gonna accomplish with it? But it's absolutely allowable if you want it. So for a little while here, I took out stuff that it said points of order and appeal for 2.5. I just take out anything that it doesn't change Robert's rules, and maybe just draft y'all a little cheat sheet to help with Robert's rules. But you're welcome to leave them in if you like. It doesn't hurt anything. I took out some language from 4.1 only because it doesn't really fit what we usually put in rules. How your boards and commissions are going to be appointed. It could go in there, but it's kind of an odd place for something like that. It seems more like something we would maybe put in ordinance for the creation of that board and committee or something like that. But again, that's if you decide that it makes sense to you, it's not what typically would go in rules. The rest of these, let's see, 5.8, 5.9, 10, 11, these are all things I said that was 5.8 through 5.12 they're just Robert's rules restatements. As far as I can tell, it didn't look like we changed anything. Sure, it was rules 5.8 through 5.12. And they can stay. They're not going to hurt anything, but I think they're just, they are just Robert's rules restated. So, okay. Rule 5.18 was the one I thought was the most confusing rule you have. I understand that, and I've been in here when things like this happen, and it was hard to figure out how to vote on something when there's, say 3 spaces open, you got 6 people applying, and how do you make that happen? What I did was, I think I pulled in the language from the model rules, which I think handles that a little better. But if for whatever reason it's just me that thinks that's confusing, more power to you. I just could barely make heads or tails of it, and so that was just my thinking on that. And that's really all I had. My biggest goal was just to have y'all think about, do your rules help you? Can you use them? Do you know what they mean? And is it, because they're just not useful if they don't.
Thank you. So just want to confirm, all of the comments in the memo that you provided are more so for ease of use, clarity, and basically to eliminate redundancy, but not necessarily illegal.
There's only one that wasn't, I'm not sure got transferred. So when I first looked at these, I gave some comments, and Annette and I think the version that got to you has anything in there that I thought had to be changed. It was very little. And then the one thing in the memo that I don't think got transferred was the executive session part for electronic participation.
And that
That is
for
the one-
sure.
Yes,
Have
that
to.
is a no-no.
That is not a suggestion. That is a
Don't do it. Yeah,
correct.
right. The rest of them are just suggestions for, your ease of use and stuff. So, yeah.
So I'll let other people.
Thank you. I have two questions. First, this isn't explicitly addressed in your memo, but did want to talk about electronic participation. So I understand that electronic participation in executive session is a no-no. So let's stipulate that as part of this conversation. So two things, because I think things have shifted a little bit. One is currently in our rules, and in this suggested revision, electronic participation is only allowable in a special called meeting. And my question to you would be, is there anything that prohibits an amendment of the rules that allows electronic participation in the main session for other meetings? I think that we've experienced a lot of situations where an otherwise able-bodied council member, or mostly able-bodied, sometimes we're sick, sometimes people have been exposed to COVID and we are told not to go. There are times when we have to travel for business, when a person would be able to participate effectively remotely, but is not currently permitted by our rules. So my question is there any legal thing that would prohibit us from making such an amendment?
No, ma'am. You can have it in any meeting you like. I remember when this rule got changed and it was added in, and it was just so long ago that nobody was participating electronically.
Sure.
And somebody did a few members did an end around of a council member while she was out of the country. And so the rule came in that would have allowed her to call in, and it changed a big vote that she couldn't participate because she wasn't, in the country. So that's how it came in. But back then, we weren't doing them electronically. We weren't probably videotaping, all this kind of stuff. It's an older rule, but you can do whatever you like. It's allowed.
Understood. And then just a quick question on, I want to say it was the last item that you mentioned, 5.18, regarding the round robin of voting. And my question is, and it was confusing. My question is it required, the way that this is written, that you take up a vote that way? Because currently the way it usually happens, and again, you've got here that any council member can make a motion to have them voted on individually, or I guess as a group. Right now, the way it is frequently done is, say there are 10 applicants for 2 vacancies, the committee would make a recommendation that you appoint 2 specific people. The way that this rule is written, does that allow that practice to continue, or does it inadvertently require us to go into that kind of sudden death scenario?
I think that unless we put some language in here allowing another method, this would probably take you to that method each time. But there's no reason why you couldn't have either. This is how you would do it if you want to do this method. This is how you do it if you want that method. So you could have both. But right now, I think it probably leads you to the one that's newly written.
So if the committee and council wanted to continue with the current practice, to have that as an option, this rule would have to be amended?
Correct.
Well, I'm not a member of this committee anymore, so I can't make a motion here. So I'll leave that to them for now until it comes to full council. I will just say that as it relates to electronic participation, I would hope that that would be something that this council would consider within the extent of the law. Of course, I think that there would have to be, common sense guidelines around that, in terms of, I don't know that you need to write how often people can do it or what have you, but just to consider that we have a successful track record of over a year of handling meetings electronically, to be able to ensure that people are able to have adequate representation when they otherwise might not. Thank you.
Madam Chair. And in response to Ms. Newton, I think regarding electronic participation, it may not have been the reason it came in for Richland County, but I think in some other organizations, that part of it is that when it's a regularly scheduled meeting, as stated, you kind of talked about, you don't know, this council, it may not be an issue, but we don't know how future councils will be, whether someone would, every single meeting want to participate electronically. So you may want to have some restraints in the regularly scheduled meeting. So I think that's one reason why it's allowed for specially called meetings, because, you know, you may not have had it on your schedule or something. So, but
Sure.
for the regularly scheduled meetings, so that's just a potential concern.
May I respond?
Yes. you're
Thank you.
recognized.
So two things, and one is I'd have to go back and look to see how it happens in the current iteration of these rules, but there was a motion to no longer have special called meetings if you scheduled them at a certain point in advance. So that could affect that. But I absolutely agree that there should be some guidelines around it. I think that if nothing else, the constituents would be upset if there was a person who decided that they wanted to phone it in for every meeting. I guess if I were writing a motion or voting on something, I would want to advocate for discretion, whether it's the discretion of the chair or the body does something, because it is very easy to write numeric rules in the abstract,
Mhm.
but speaking from personal experience, one doesn't always determine when one has to have a medical procedure or a relative has to, or heaven forbid, other circumstances apply. So I 100% agree that there should be guardrails. I guess I was just advocating if they could err on the common sense and discretion side, as opposed to a firm, thou shalt only be able to participate remotely, after you circumambulate the harvest moon, one time, or whatever the case may be.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Malinowski, Barron, Mackey,
Yes.
motion approved.